the amazing privilege of speaking with, and y'all aren't going to believe this. I've spoken with Luke Harlan before, and we post a lot of his stuff on social media because he cares about others. He is a transformation coach, a wonderful speaker. His mission is to help others. As I love this group of speakers, that's where everybody comes from. So if the team would please bring Luke up, hey, Luke,
There.
how are
It's
you, sir? I'm so happy to see you.
it is my pleasure. I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for asking. But yeah, no, it's my pleasure to contribute here and hopefully add some value to all these other amazing mentors and coaches and other speakers.
You know, every time I've spoken to you, I've walked away with quite a few pearls. So I'm so thrilled that you're here to share with the audience. And when I really think that you address transformation so beautifully and so often, and so many of us do, you remind us that it gets down to mindset. And
Exactly.
how in the world do we face these fears in order to have a mindset that allows us to transform, to grow, and to learn?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. And typically what I do is kind of break it down because a lot of times we'll deal at the top level of the fear itself and try to attack it from these angles, or you fall into these cliches. Oh, it's not real. It's all in your mind. That really doesn't help the panic attack. And when you're frustrated and you shut down, and these are real things, we have real fears. And to that end, it's all in our minds. Remember, our brain doesn't know the difference between tactile external reality and the thoughts in our head, and that's actually a really good thing because everything that's ever been created comes from a thought. So we control our lives through our thoughts, and then when we execute and put it to rubber to the road, that's how things get created. That's how things get done and executed and become real. But they become real in the mind first. So to say it's all in your mind, well, everything, that's where it originates. But how do we address these fears? That fear of failure, that fear of judgment, the fear of not feeling good enough about ourselves, or that we're not good enough for everything, is a lot of times we're in that fear realm instead of taking a step back and understanding, well, what is failure? And looking at it from a growth mindset perspective, from a shift in perspective, because if the fear is real, let's identify a few things. What is fear? And if we look at it, it's really just a signal from our body, an alert from our system to say, hey, take a look at this. This is something that you need to address. Now, whether we view it or choose to view it as something that, oh my God, it's fearful, or something that we should be excited about, is just a matter of how we interpret it. Because physiologically, there is no difference between how our body reacts when we're excited or when we're fearful. The physiology is the same. When we get the amygdala, this little part of our brain that we always attribute to that fight, flight, or freeze mentality when things happen, is the same thing. What it does, our heart races increase, cortisol is released, adrenaline is pumping, the blood goes to our extremities because we're ready to take some action. The problem is, and most people know this, when the blood goes away to our extremities, it goes away from our brain. So we get a little bit of brain fog. So that's when we get that uncertainty and we have that feeling of, hey, what do we do? I don't know what to do. These are natural physiological reactions to when we get triggered. Something in our body alerts us that, hey, we got to pay attention to this. So if we slow it down and just say, okay, what is it that we need to pay attention to? And then that's when we start labeling it. And sometimes that fear that we label as fear could be an opportunity. I mean, if you think about it, I have to get up on stage and speak, and suddenly you're super nervous, and I'm going to forget my words, and everyone's going to laugh at me, and no one's going to invite me back, and I'm going to crawl into a hole and die. Well, while that's when we say it out loud, it seems silly, but in the moment, it's paralyzing. And we've all
Right.
been there with things. So it's
Right.
legitimate. It's not something to mock or make fun of. But when we start saying it out loud, and that's what we start needed to do, is to talk about it, is to write it out and understand that when we get it out into the ether and shine light against it, it's actually a lot smaller than the reality of what we're trying to, make it to be. So we start minimizing and demystifying what it is. And one of the tools that I like to use is take it through its conclusion in your mind. Okay, you get on stage, you fumble a little bit, the slides don't work, you get nervous, you repeat yourself, you maybe not talk loud enough, and you kind of slump away and you think your life's over. But is life over? Did you die? No, of
Right.
course not.
Yeah.
But if you shift the perspective and say, okay, that wasn't the best. What can I learn from it? Where is the growth opportunity? Because all growth happens from challenge, and you were challenged, and no one is perfect the first time. This is just an opportunity to say, maybe I could have been better prepared. I could have practiced more. There's some things I can do better next time. Give yourself a little pat on the back. Hey, I went out on stage and I did that. Give yourself. So there's a lot to attack with that. I'll let you kind of chime in because I could go on because there's so many
No,
parts
but
to it.
I love that so much because it's the truth. What you're sharing and what I'm hearing, and I'm going to guess the audiences as well, imperfection is part of the day. It's part of the life. We're going to have to make the mistakes. And what's great about that is that the mistakes, not only do we learn from them, but we are giving an example to others. Oh my gosh, that happened and I did it again.
It-
I did it again.
well,
And it wasn't perfect. I made a new mistake. I corrected that one and I made a new one.
Well, that's the evolution of growth mindset is not seeing failure as a pass fail, as something to be, run away from. It's something to meet head on. We all fail. We didn't walk out of the womb. We had to learn to crawl and then stand and wobble and take our steps. And that took a lengthy process of trial and error to eventually got to the point of walking. That's exactly what we're not born knowing how to do everything. We have to learn it and then apply it and then get through it and get better at it. We all stink starting out, but that's just the reality of it. But when you take the perspective of it's like, hey, what did I learn? What can I do better? Hey, I did it. Pat yourself on the back. You took that action step. Because here's the thing. If you really want to accomplish something in life and it's a driver and there's that fear of failure, fear of being judged, not feeling good enough, is that pat yourself on the back. All you need is that push, that 51%, 49%. 51% of you gets on stage or gets in front of the job interview or asks that person out or has a difficult conversation or tries something new. That's all you need is to get yourself in that state to try it and do it once. And then you'll realize you didn't die. The earth didn't end. The family didn't abandon you. You weren't fired. Like all the things that you make up in your head to hold you back, but also acknowledge that rationalization of fear to hold you back. It comes from a safety mechanism. It comes from that amygdala. It comes from the fight or flight. Back when if we deviated from what we normally do, we'd be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That doesn't exist anymore, but the processing does. That reptilian early caveman brain still exists in our wiring. So that's why we have to consciously override the old wiring from days of old and just acknowledge, hey, meet the fear head on. I know what this feeling is. I know it's irrational, even though I feel it's very real. What can I do? I can shift my perspective, take it to its conclusion. Are you going to die? No. These things aren't going to happen. And when you start talking about it and writing it down and getting it out there, it demystifies it, it minimizes, it takes the air out of it, and then gets you to that 51%. And like you said, when you do it once, it builds up that determination, that resilience, that fortitude to try again. And then that 51 becomes 60, and then 65, and then 70. It
That's
doesn't
right.
mean you won't get butterflies, won't get nervous, won't. And and here's something. When you get nervous, it means you care. You care about how you perform, you care about the value you deliver. There's not a person on stage. Tony Robbins has probably delivered 10 million, talks and gets up there and seems like seamless. He has a routine. He gets himself in state. He is nervous because he cares so much about delivering the highest value. A lot of pro athletes get sick before games. Why? Because they want to do their best and it means something to you. So that is just another alert from your body that you're out there with the right attitude, with the right genuine authenticity to give, give, give. So you're a servant leader. So pat yourself on the back for that as well.
I love this so much because this is interesting. This conversation came up. Somebody said, you're talking about fear. People talk about it all the time. They hear it and they hear it. And my thoughts on this, and many of us have heard bits and pieces of what's being shared today.
Sure.
However, how many people and how many of us still have a real relationship with fear that stops us from taking the next step? So many of us, you're the mission and the want and the goal and the need or the relationship, something has to be bigger for a lot of people to take a step and face the fear. But what we're talking about here, the tools that are being shared today, are about accountability so that it's not such a struggle to force our way through and exhaust ourselves. What's being shared today are tools, and to look at fear, look at all emotions, positive or negative, as tools to work into the flow of our lives in order for us to grow with more ease and joy, rather than just forcing, like, okay, I'm going to do this, but we're so miserable doing it, and I mean, and my God Almighty, it's such a choice.
Well, a lot of that is ego driven, if you think about it. If you want to be a servant leader, it's not about you. You're the messenger. You're bringing a message to people, and it's about them getting it, that aha moment or that value driven, principle. Whatever it is, you're just bringing it to them, and how you bring it to it, whether you stumble and fall, if they get the message, if they get that aha moment, it's about them, not you. When we start saying, how do people going to feel about me? We're missing the bigger picture. And the other thing is, remember, it's all perspective. When we look at things, is it an obstacle or is it an opportunity to grow? Nothing good has ever happened in your life without challenge, without some sort of fear. That first date, that job interview, that asking, the relationship, hard conversations, everything we've done, we've had to get out of our comfort zone. We've had to do things to change ourselves, change our environment in order to get what we wanted. This is no different. A lot of times we just kind of empathize and spotlight and highlight and blow up something that seems bigger than it is. But what I've always learned is that when I have that initial gut feeling or that like fear reaction on something that I try to avoid, I've learned to say, actually, that is my body telling me this is exactly what we need to do to grow. We need to face it head on. And if we don't know the answer or don't know how, that's why there's all these people, these coaches and mentors and pathways that we can learn. Hey, how do I go about this? How do I change this? How do I dissect that fear? Where is it coming from? And when we start analyzing it under the microscope, we realize that, wait a minute, it's not that big. It's something I can practice. I'm not doing it because I don't feel skilled enough, therefore I feel not good enough. Okay, if you get more confident at something, you're going to be more confident. And if you're more confident, you're going to take that action. It's just when we don't know what we don't know, when we don't raise our hands, when we don't engage with others and just say, hey, we need a little help here, like walking. You didn't crawl, mom held your hand, dad held your hand. When you first rode a bike, you had training wheels. This is to say that we depend on each other to learn and grow. And that's when we drop our ego, we accept the help, and we realize the strength is in the vulnerability of pursuing our passion and asking others to help us along the way.
Yeah, I love that. I do think that strength and courage, all in the asking for help.
Sure.
I think it's the most beautiful example, I think, for anyone that has kiddos, or in any environment, actually, where we work, in our relationships with our partners, whatever it is, asking for help, number one, is an enormous sign of trust in the person you're asking. And what a privilege for them to get in that conversation. But what a beautiful example of what to do next, because whatever got us to wherever we are now is not going to get us to where we're trying to go.
We have to become the person that can. And in order to do that, we have to grow and we have to fill ourselves with new knowledge and then execute on that and get the experience. So we have the skill and then we move forward. one of the things you had said is like when we're face to face and we have this sort of demon of fear or whatever it is, a lot of times name it, and if you name it something silly and then it peeks its head around the corner, you're just calling it out. And then that's the way to say, hey, you understand the relationship. I know you're trying to stop me, but you're not going to stop me this time because I have bigger goals, I have bigger visions, and I know I feel this way, but those feelings can change. And what changes feeling all the time, 9 times out of 10, is taking action. When you take action, you flip the switch. You can't be in a state of, freezing, of hesitation and things like that when you're in an action state. When you're in a positive action state, those things just go by the wayside. You're either moving or you're not moving. So once you start moving and taking action, all those things dissipate and get muted, and then you start building that confidence and that belief cycle. And that's all you have to do. But that's what we call that leap of faith, is that we start taking that action, even though our fear says, oh, you're going to fall, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And it's just trying to rationalize and stop you. But the last thing I'm going to say is that if nothing changes, nothing changes. You already know where your current situation is. So if you do nothing, you're exactly either in the pain or the mediocrity or whatever you want to call it, where you are before you had that initial drive or that thought, hey, I want to do something more, something different. I want to escalate. I want to evolve. I want to ascend. I want to level up. Well, how's that going to happen? You have to do something. You have to take action. And if you take no action, you're exactly where you are. So there is no downside to taking action. And it's not failure, it's learning, it's growth opportunity. This is where we turn our mess into our message, our obstacle into our opportunity. And that's when you shift to that perspective, that's when you start saying, bring it on. Bring the hurdles, bring the things. Because now you have the fortitude to attack it, but you have everyone else around you to maybe empower you with the skills, or hey, I've been through it. This is what we did to attack it. This is how we did it. You don't have to have all the answers. That's the
Yeah,
beautiful thing. You just have to be able to ask the question. And yeah, that takes courage, but that's the whole thing about having courage and faith and taking action, is your belief will catch up in time.
that's exactly right. Action is the number one step.
Mhm.
Any one step,
Yep.
step in forward action. A phone call. You mentioned a couple of things, and I know we're going to jump off here. Number one,
Sure.
please, everyone, Luke is always so generous to all the participants, and he's there for us. Follow, check it out. He has so many great things to offer, and he's so generous with his time and his gifts. So thank you for that, Luke,
Of
before
course.
we jump off. And I love that everybody, either we're growing or we're not.
Mhm.
And it is quite simple. We don't have to become number one in our field overnight. We just have to take one step to move towards. Oh, look, I love, what is that? Look at
That's
I love it. But here's the thing, y'all, follow Luke, check out what he's offering for all of us. He is so wonderful, so generous. His mission is so huge. He works to transform and help people grow every single solitary day. He's full of wisdom. And as he and I believe, coaches have coaches. So trust me, he is growing. Every one of these speakers, everyone is growing right along with every one of you. Thank you so much, Luke.
Oh, it is my pleasure, and thank you for having me. And
Oh,
God bless. Remember, our tests are our testimony,
there you
and
go.
we're given those for a reason. We're given what we can handle, and that's just the way of the world. And if you accept that, you're really just going to have so many blessings.
Oh, thank you, Luke. And we'll talk again soon. I know it, and I look forward to it.
All right, thank you again, Carol. Take
Thank
care,
you
guys.
so much. Have a wonderful day.